All right, so if you have been paying attention to college basketball this season, then there are two things that you 100% know. One is that the Duke Blue Devils are really, really good right now. And two is that Cooper Flagg is also really, really good right now. Flagg has been spectacular throughout his freshman year, adding to this list of amazing Duke freshman players that we've seen over the course of time, like those Zion Williamsons or those Jabari Parkers or even those Jahlil Okafors. Flagg comes into the season projected as the #1 overall pick. And despite some great performances from some other players across the country like Ace Bailey or maybe VJ Edgecombe or even Derek Queen, who had an amazing game winner today for Maryland in the tournament, Cooper Flagg has still remained as the projected #1 overall pick. Great all-around skill set at 6'9", ridiculously athletic, definitely has a future as a potential all-defensive level guy once he gets to that NBA level, and also showing some great upside as a scorer. One thing people were kind of questioning about him coming into the season was his jump shot, but if you've been watching him this particular season here with Duke, looks very confident in his ability to knock down shots. Solid stroke from outside the arc and very, very confident stroke off like the pull-up in the mid-range area. That's one of his sweet spots as we've seen so far this year. But with Flagg, I've noticed there are a lot of really weird narratives and conversations and debates about him that I think are a little bit over the top and ridiculous. And I don't know if we've had these types of conversations about other #1 overall picks over the years. So there are like two major conversations happening right now with Flagg that I'm going to zero in on throughout this video. One of them is this: does Cooper Flagg have actual franchise level potential? There are definitely people who think that he does, and there are others who think that he's not that sort of guy. So I'll start with this. We all know going into certain drafts, if it is a draft where we're going to get franchise level talent, right? So obviously just last season where Zachary Richichet was the #1 overall pick, we kind of knew there aren't a lot of franchise level players in that class. Now that could end up changing. It's just 1 year in, you never know what could end up happening. But like we know coming in what drafts are going to be like the super, super high impact ones that are going to give us these franchise level guys, and also what classes are going to be the other way around. And again, I'm not going to completely down the most previous draft class because you never know what can end up happening. But as fans, we kind of know going into a draft class if certain guys are franchise level and if certain guys aren't franchise level. Cooper Flagg, 100%. If I'm making projections and if I'm making predictions, he is not a guy that I look at coming into a draft class wondering whether or not he is a franchise level player. If we look at his base skill set and his archetype and the accolades and the experience, I don't see a world where if you're making predictions and making projections and that's what you're simply doing, I don't see a world where you look at Cooper Flagg's output and production and wonder whether or not he has franchise level potential. I just don't see it. Again, I'm going to talk about that skill set and the body type and all of that stuff again. 6'9" with that large array of skills. With the way the league is now, where versatility is king, both on the offensive end and especially on the defensive end, how do you look at Cooper Flagg and question whether or not he can be a franchise level player? Again, if we're in the game of making predictions and projections and all of these things, I don't understand how you can look at Flagg and look at what's been working in the NBA and not make that connection and think that Flagg can thrive and be dominant as a franchise level guy in the way the game is being played today on the NBA level. Flagg hasn't done anything this season to make me not think that he is a franchise level player. If I walked into this season thinking Cooper Flagg has franchise level potential and teams should tank for him and watch his production this year, there was nothing that I saw that made me change my mind. There is a reason why Cooper Flagg started the season at the top of draft boards and ended the season on top of draft boards. GMs are looking to draft Cooper Flagg with this idea that he will be a future franchise, build your team around sort of player based off of his production this season and some of his previous experiences, especially with him playing at a ridiculously high level against the Team USA that we think was arguably the greatest of all time in the summer over scrimmage action. GMs are going to look at all of that and expect him to be a future franchise guy. He just has not given us many reasons to think otherwise. If we're stacking him up with like previous #1 overall draft picks, I think he's on the same tier as a lot of guys we believed from the draft were franchise level players. Flagg is not far off from some of the other great number one overall draft picks that we saw at this particular point in time in their careers. Then there's this other conversation that is ridiculously annoying at this point. I'm just hearing it and it just seems like a hot take that people are just coming up with. What is this idea that Cooper Flagg needs to do another year at Duke? There is no argument in the world where you can convince me that a projected number one overall pick, again, with this skill set and this body type and the experience and the current level he's playing at, where he's playing for one of the most renowned teams in all of college sports, getting them to a number one overall seed, there is no way in the world where you can convince me that he needs to come back and do another year in the NCAA. There is zero argument at all. If Flagg's goal is to get to the NBA and become one of the greatest NBA players of all time and maximize on his basketball potential, what argument is there that makes sense against him going to the NBA at 18 years old right now? There's no argument at all. We can say a million things about maybe there being some particular things in his game that he needs to work on, but here's the thing. Every single number one overall pick throughout the course of NBA history has things in their game they need to work on. So saying this is the skill set Flagg needs to work on and this is the skill set he needs to improve upon does not negate the fact that he still deserves to be the number one overall draft pick. Name me a number one overall draft pick that went into the NBA without there being some significant things in his game he needed to sharpen up on. I'll wait. I feel like the closest we came was maybe Victor Wembanyama, and there may have been some other guys, but even Vic had some things in his game that he had to work on and improve upon that sometimes come up now when he's playing. What number one overall pick deserve to not go number one overall because they had certain flaws in their game? So that argument doesn't hold up. The argument that he needs to stay back another year to develop himself doesn't make sense, right? There are some other conversations. There's the NIL conversation, but no NIL money is going to be better than the money you're going to get as a franchise level player or a budding franchise level player in the NBA. There are conversations about him maybe coming back to actually win another title at Duke if they don't win this year, which is absolutely ridiculous because why risk injury when you can go now to the league and try to maximize on your potential? Why risk that for a college championship? Again, if Flagg's goal is to get to the NBA and become the greatest NBA player that he can be, you want to start now at the age of 18. Simply put, that's not a crazy hot take. That's a very common take, not just from me, but from NBA GMs alike, because guess what? They would love to draft a guy when he's young because you can get a lot of years out of a guy when he's relatively young. There is a reason why a lot of times it's a bit of a red flag to draft a guy when he's maybe 22 or 23, because you have to deal with the potential of him being or having a bit of a shorter NBA career. Right? There's a reason why GMs are going to look at taking players at younger ages, because there's more time for them to maximize on their potential and their skill set. So again, these are just some conversations that I've heard about Cooper Flagg circulating around the internet that I just think are a bit ridiculous. And I don't know why they're coming up, because again, we don't have these sorts of conversations with other projected number one overall draft picks. I think some of these talking points are pretty unfair. And again, I don't know why these talking points are happening. It may just be people coming with hot takes or just these like contrarian takes and opinions on things. Cooper Flagg is your projected number one overall draft pick. In a draft class like this, where there is a lot of talent, especially within the lottery, I do think he has franchise level upside. Other GMs believe he has franchise level upside for a reason. 6'9", large skill set, playing at Duke, knows how to win. There is actual footage and evidence of him playing well against professional, high-level professional basketball players. There's no world where, if we're in the game of making projections and predictions, where you don't think Cooper Flagg is a franchise level guy and don't look at him as a player that a team would build around. And again, this other conversation about him needing to go back for another year, I don't know where that came from. I don't know the logic behind it, but I'm here to double down on it again. It makes zero sense in the world. So we'll see. And again, I'm not saying that Flagg is flawless and Flagg is the best number one overall pick that we have ever seen, because that's not the case at all. I'm not saying that. I am saying that some of these talking points and these conversations that are being had about Cooper Flagg are really coming out of nowhere, and they don't make sense, especially in context with other number one overall draft picks or projected number one overall draft picks that we've seen in really good draft classes over the years. So hopefully he can stay consistent and have a great run the rest of the way down in the tournament, and hopefully Duke can capitalize off of what was an amazing regular season and make this deep run. But I'm excited to see what Flagg does the rest of the way down and what he's able to do once he's headed into the NBA. Hopefully contrary to a lot of your beliefs this summer instead of the next summer in his sophomore year.